Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so very much for joining us at Speak Up and Empower with Real Talk Travel. It's a Tuesday afternoon. I don't know where you're at, but it's sunny in my end, and I'm certainly enjoying the sunshine, and it's making me itchy for travel and adventure. Are you up and ready for it? Where is our adventure going to go today? Well, definitely we got a special guest again, Cara Mathews with Quark Expeditions, and we are going to go to Antarctica. And believe me, travel is very important. Just before I get into that, and before we let Cara start, Speak Up and Power is an online membership based filled with people who have got something important to say and they really want to make a difference in the world. And I'm with Real Talk Travel. And like I said earlier, we always look forward to adventure, or I do anyway. Do you? And our adventure today is going to be with Cara, and she's going to talk about Antarctica. And there's places, because travel empowers you, travel motivates, rejuvenates you. And when you go to destinations like we're going to talk about today, you will come back a changed person. So why not put this on your list and let's get started. Cara, how can we get to Antarctica? Take it away and welcome today.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so looking forward to traveling to the end of the world today, the bottom of the earth. And so we will be exploring today Antarctica. But also, Susan, I love also talking about the subantarctic region, South Georgia, as well as the Falklands too, because I feel like I can't talk about Antarctica without talking about these amazing subantarctic places too.
Absolutely.
So let's go. So if some of you hadn't seen a couple of the Arctic presentations that we did, I just wanted to let you know that, as Susan mentioned, I'm Cara Mathews. I've been working for Quark Expeditions for over 12 years now. I really have loved exploring to some of these remote locations of the planet, like Greenland and the North Pole, even 90 degrees north. So it's an absolute delight to be here with you. And so please feel free to ask questions too, or even later on, if you're watching this at a later date, don't hesitate to reach out to Susan, because Susan and I chat all the time, and we're here to support you in finding a great trip to the polar regions. But with Quark Expeditions, we've been in business for nearly 3 decades, bringing people to the Arctic and Antarctica. We were the first company to take guests to the North Pole in 1991, which is still a trip that we do today.
Yeah.
And then we also were the first company to fully circumnavigate Antarctica, which we'll find out later on that it is the 5th largest continent on the planet. So with our trips, we're on small little expedition vessels, which I'll show you a couple near the end of the presentation. But with us, it's under 200 passengers. So it's really important, if you do decide to travel in these really remote locations, to pick a small expedition ship. Any ships that are under 200 passengers, everyone's able to get off at the same time. Whereas ships in these areas that are 250, 300, 500 passengers, not everyone can get off the ship at the same time. And actually, some of them you can't even step foot onto the 7th continent itself. So we are on small little expedition ships when I'm talking about these regions. I did like sharing who travels to the polar regions, because you might be thinking, Susan, why are you talking about Antarctica today? I don't think that this is for me, right, Susan? Have you heard that before?
Yes.
It's like, why would I go there?
Why would I go there? What?
It's too cold. It's too far. And so that's why we're here today, because I think that, again, when I talk about the 4 types of Quark travelers, you might find that you're in one of these categories, or maybe 2, or maybe all 4, because it is going to the ends of the earth. It is a fantastic checklister experience. And maybe you've traveled to Africa or the Galapagos, and you want to check off seeing this, putting your foot on the 7th continent, or seeing that penguin. And so those are some reasons to go to the ends of the world, to Antarctica, to the bottom of the planet. But also, if you're a learner, we have glaciologists, biologists, we even have historians and ornithologists that comes on board. And the penguinologist, though, is the thing that really gets me in Antarctica. We have penguinologists that travels with us. So we have people that work at maybe even the London Zoo in England. And so people that are basically really researching penguins.
I would love to talk to them. That would be right up my alley.
And I'll share too with you, Susan, a fun little video clip that you can share with everyone about a penguin that actually jumped into a zodiac to get away from the orca whales.
Oh.
Those pods of orcas were chasing this penguin, and you can see the penguin jumping in and out of the water, and all of a sudden safety was in the comfort of the zodiac. So those are some fun moments. But also, if you with the educational component, if you're a learner, so that is a big one. But also, if you like to get away from it all, get in the heart of nature, if you're that escapist spirit, especially now during these times, people are wanting to get away from large crowds and get into the heart of nature. And that's really what the polar regions are about. So if you're an escapist, Antarctica is definitely a destination that you should think about going to in the future. And also those adventurers. I know, Susan, you're an adventurer. And that's definitely the type of person that comes with us to Antarctica. So these trips can be as active or as leisure as one wants them to be. I feel like it's an adventure spirit enough, being on the vessel and not even getting off, but being in these regions, sailing around and seeing the beautiful glaciers and mountain ranges. But we do have extensive paddling programs like kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, mountaineering, which I'll share with you later on too. So it can be for any type of activity level. I was on board with an 86-year-old who didn't get off the ship once in the polar regions. There's also a 99-year-old. So even though our minimum age is 8, there's no limit to the age of the adventure that comes with Quark Expeditions.
Absolutely. Especially when it's in the heart.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So with Antarctica today, we'll talk about, again, the peninsula, the Antarctic Peninsula, which is a finger of land closest to Argentina. So I'll share you a map with that. And also the Falklands and South Georgia. So let's get started to the bottom of the world and navigating Antarctica.
Yeah.
So I love maps, Susan, and it's just so neat to know that where Antarctica is situated, because I think of the bottom of the world. But it's neat that the finger of land, this peninsula, is close to South America. So really close to Argentina. A lot of our trips go from Argentina, from Ushuaia, that you can see there on the map. And so this is the closest point to sail across to Antarctica. And with the finger of land there, a lot of operators go to these regions, Susan, because of the fact that it's the largest concentration of wildlife. So there's over 20 million penguins in Antarctica, and a lot of them are in this peninsula, which is a great reason to explore this region.
That's
so
awesome.
It is the 5th largest continent, and it's 98% covered in ice. So there's a lot of ice in Antarctica, and it's twice the size of Australia.
Wow.
So
and
imagine that.
Big. Yeah.
So it's 14 million square kilometers. So that's just, and what I love about what we were talking about earlier, Susan, with the previous sessions with Arctic. So when we're talking about Greenland and areas like Spitsbergen, the Arctic is, water. It's an ocean surrounded by landmass. But with Antarctica, it's surrounded by water. It's a landmass surrounded by water. So that's a big difference, which is incredible. And no one's been living in Antarctica. I mean, we do have scientists there that do research and things like that now, and videographers go and explorers. But where Arctic people have been living for thousands of years, the Arctic is so, their winters are so cold that people just weren't able to survive. So it's neat that now it's for scientists. And so the best time to go for travelers is in their summer.
Summer, right.
So our North American hemisphere it's our winter, and then it's their summer. So in the Southern hemisphere. So we start generally the beginning of November, end of October, all the way to the beginning of April to explore Antarctica. So this is, if you're thinking about ever traveling there, it's not as cold as people think it is, because it varies in temperatures. I went in February with my 66-year-old aunt. We had an amazing time. And we went in February, so there were times where it was +5, but all the way, to -4 degrees Celsius. So again, not as chilly. I'm based in Toronto, even though we're a US-based company in Seattle. Our winters, there were some weeks here a couple weeks ago that it was about -22 with wind chill, and it did not get that cold in Antarctica at all when I was there in December or February. So the months that I've traveled into Antarctica, it certainly hasn't reached as cold as it has when me living in Toronto.
So it's almost like the weather that we're having just recently.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like sometimes like spring skiing. I always find there were days where I was walking around on the continent for a little contemplative walk, and I would tie my parka around my waist. So everyone's seeing these parkas on the screen there. These yellow parkas come with every Quark Expedition, so they'll be waiting for you in your cabin, and they come with removable liners. So there were some days where I would be on a longer walk or a hike, and I would just have my liner on. Or even for barbecues. Susan, we have some barbecues on board, which are fun.
Oh, cool.
When the sun's shining and there's no wind, it's always fun to do a barbecue and get everyone out on deck, and it's a little party.
Sounds good to me. Let's go.
Let's go. And so with Antarctica, not only people are traveling there because it is the 7th continent for a lot of people, it's a lot of people's bucket list item, checking off that list, but wildlife. I know we talked about penguins, but there's so much wildlife like whales and other bird species and seals. So if you are someone who's really into wildlife, this is the destination for you. If you're well-traveled, and maybe you've cruised all the rivers and you're thinking, now what? Well, why not cruise some fjords in Antarctica? And it's just incredible. So it's definitely, if you are well-traveled and this is another just unique new destination, definitely highly recommend looking into Antarctica.
I just have a quick question. I know do you see any king penguins, or are they more further in?
I love that you know king penguins and you know species, Susan. That is so amazing, because there are 17 species of penguins, and you've named a very popular king penguin. So when we're going to the peninsula, so where we really focus and where we're going and spending a lot of our time today, you don't see the king penguins.
No. Okay.
So on this map here, if you can see the Falkland Islands in South Georgia in this area here, a lot of the king penguins are in South Georgia. So we'll definitely talk about that today, because that's where a lot of the king penguins are. I love that they're on your radar. Yeah. So those are the 2nd largest penguin species. I love it. So that's really something good to know, because if people are thinking about Antarctica, and a lot of people are only going once, why not swing by South Georgia on the way, extending a trip a little bit longer, but to see that 2nd largest penguin species that you wouldn't see in Antarctica.
Yeah, might as well. And
so there's 2 ways to get to Antarctica with Quark, and one is to sail the Drake Passage, which typically takes a day and a half to 2 days in each direction to sail. And we go from Ushuaia, Argentina, and we start from there and we sail across to the Antarctic Peninsula and we sail back. And it typically is one of the roughest bodies of water in the world. And it doesn't matter what month you sail in, Susan. If you get seasick, there are times where I got seasick in one way, but I didn't get another, because some days we called it the Drake Lake, and it was quite calm.
Yes.
Like with my aunt on the way there, I had a little bit of the Drake shake. So my aunt and I, we slept a little bit and we took some Gravol, and, my aunt saw the ship doctor to get a little bit of stronger medication. And we did sleep, but we had some fun memories laughing in our cabin with some of those bobbing. And,
that's cool.
But on the way back, Susan, it was quite calm. So we were out on deck. We were able to see, some other birds, like there's some albatross sightings sometimes around the ship, which I'll talk about a bit. So why it is sometimes the roughest body of water of the world is the fact that it's a convergence of a lot of the oceans coming together.
Yeah, I was going to say that. The ocean, it's a bit rough. Yeah. It's the current. Yes.
And why, it's so funny, because beer and wine is included with dinners on our trips. And so my aunt and I, we did make it to dinner one night going down there. And I had a glass of Malbec. And I just got into Malbec's being in Buenos Aires. So if you are thinking of going to Antarctica and you haven't been to Buenos Aires, Susan, please book people in Buenos Aires a couple nights, because if you're listening right now, Buenos Aires is
worth it.
Fantastic city. Fantastic. And checking out a tango show and that sort of thing. But my aunt and I were crossing the Drake Passage, and I had Malbec in my glass, and a server came around, and I noticed right at the last minute that he had Cabernet Sauvignon. And I said, no, I have Malbec in my glass. I don't want there to be a convergence of wine in my wine glass. Leave that to the Drake Passage. But, if you are prone to seasickness, I do get seasickness as well, but it was very worth it. And when I landed on the continent itself, I forgot all about it. And my aunt gets seasickness too. So she loved the experience once we got there. She thought, you know what, that was a memory. Some people want that badge of honor, Susan, on their arm.
Absolutely. Yes.
But we also have a fly cruise program. So there are ways to get to Antarctica, and you can fly from Punta Arenas, Chile, and fly over. So we have a jet, and then you safely get to Antarctica. It's about a 3.5, 4 hour flight, and you land in Antarctica and get on the ship there, have a full Antarctic experience, and fly back.
Yeah. That would give you an overall experience, fly and the ship cruise.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, what can I see and do though when we get to Antarctica? And even going and crossing the Drake Passage, though, is neat. Seeing, it was my first iceberg sighting. I saw a little penguin. So these are the little chin strap penguins here. So this is one of the species that we can see on Antarctica, on the continent. And so lazy seals, like the leopard seals, and the Waddell seals. They're just so cute, and I love sometimes seeing them even in a Zodiac cruise, because we're in these little rubber boats doing some Zodiac cruising and getting on landing sites. And it's neat even seeing some of the seals sunbathing. You can tell they've had a nice meal of some fish or some penguins. So it's really neat to see that. And also, if history people, if you're really into history, I felt like expedition explorers in the polar regions, some of the history was quite dry. But now that I've traveled with Quark Expeditions, and our historian Susan really brought the stories to life, whether it was the shopuld exploration or the whaling stations in Antarctica. So, seeing a lot of history locations too are huge, huge highlights too. But definitely the penguins star of the show for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So guys are Adelie penguins, and there's Gentoo penguins as well. And so a commonly asked question is, can I walk amongst the penguins? Can I get off the ship and get on the continent itself? And yes, with Quark Expeditions, you can get off the ship, land on the continent itself. We go into penguin rookeries. And Susan, what's neat is, even though there's a safe distance that we have to have between us and the penguins, or any wildlife for that matter, with seals and what have you, the penguins are so curious.
Yeah, so I was wondering if they would just want to come closer anyway.
Yes, they have no fear. Really, they're not scared of humans. They feel like there's no threat.
Right.
So they come waddling around, and it was neat because I was staring at this beautiful glacier on one of my landings in an area called on Port Lockroy, which is a British post office station, and so I was able to mail some postcards home, which was neat. But I was standing looking at a beautiful glacier. It was a sunny day, and I had my feet shoulder width apart, looking at this glacier, just pondering. And I love being in these remote locations and just contemplating where we are at the end of the earth. And a penguin walked right in between my legs.
Oh, that's cool.
And then he stopped and he looked right up at me. I actually don't know if it was a male or female, but looked right up at me. And I had this moment in his eyes. And then he kind of looked down, nipped a little bit of my waterproof pants, saying, what does this taste like? Yeah. And so I had my baggy waterproof pants on, my ski pants, and then he just kept on going. And it was just such a neat, intimate experience. So again, I wasn't walking up to the penguin, but the penguins, like you say, they come right up to you.
That definitely is worth the travel to go see those penguins.
Whales. Susan, are you a whale fan?
Yes, I enjoy watching whales. Yes.
Yeah. So I grew up on the west coast of British Columbia. I enjoyed seeing whales, but there was nothing like seeing whales in Antarctica. And I loved also seeing humpbacks. So my aunt and I, one morning, we were supposed to go on a landing site, but in true expedition fashion. And that's really what expedition means, is one day you might plan one thing, but because of weather or wildlife sighting, there might be something else that we pivot to and enjoy seeing instead. So we were supposed to go on a landing, but we were in a bay, and two humpback whales, a mother and her calf, decided to grace us with their presence. And it was amazing. For about 2.5 hours, we were in this bay, bobbing around, turned off the Zodiacs, and it was just a wonderful, intimate experience in that morning in Antarctica. And so knowing that, like, seeing some humpbacks in Hawaii, and knowing that some humpbacks, they migrate down to Antarctica for the Antarctic summer, it's just incredible.
That's it. That is interesting. And whales are so unique. People don't realize it's the tail that gives the telltale of who they are and how unique they are. And people might think, oh, that looks like just a tail, just an ordinary tail. But the scientists and everything, and you get to distinguish unique marks, don't they?
That is such an amazing point. That's brilliant, because that reminds me, Susan, of a site that scientists use. So if you spot a whale, you can actually see if you did see the same whale again somewhere else, or you can actually help with scientists' research because exactly of that, the fin of the whale. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the tail as well. Yep. And glaciers. I never got sick of ice being in Antarctica. It's just glaciers of every manageable size.
It's beautiful, like the colors, right? The hues that come off the glaciers. Like you think ice is ice, but no, you haven't seen it until you actually go to and see these actually glaciers, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's so quiet. Like that was the one thing that I was all these glaciers, you're just looking and you're in the presence of this ice, and the glaciers, how beautiful they are and magnificent and silent they are.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in the silence, you might hear the calving in the distance of the glacier.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if people have cruised Alaska, cruising Antarctica, it's definitely an out-of-the-box adventure, but the cruising in this area is just beautiful in addition to the activity levels. And so with our new ship to the Ultramarine, I love being able to, with helicopters, it has 2 helicopters on this new vessel. And so with the glaciers, it's neat to be able to see the glaciers from the zodiacs, from sea level, but then also to have, there's a 15-minute per person included helicopter sightseeing excursion for flight seeing. And
Wow.
it's neat to be able to get a different perspective of that glacier.
I just, when I see these pictures, like people think, oh, it's just ice, but I just see so much serenity and reflection and rejuvenation when you actually are there.
Yeah. And you've nailed it too when you're talking about travel rejuvenating. It's so true. I think, there are moments that I love living in a city, and can be sensory overload, and so I think going to these polar regions too, it really it does rejuvenate us. You're bang on with this travel in general, but so the polar regions are very special for that. I couldn't agree with you more with travel and rejuvenation. And with the ice, it's neat that there's icebergs everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, of course, going a bit later in the season, in the heart of their summer, of the Antarctic summer, so more into February, March, there are more, icebergs popping up everywhere of every manageable size. But in November and December, there's more snow and bigger glaciers, and so there will be bigger icebergs at that time, with some of them maybe breaking off. But there are no 2 icebergs that are alike. So it's neat that it's a piece of art that people will just never see again.
It's like everybody's fingerprint, right? Totally different.
Totally different. Which one is unique? You're right.
Yes.
But being in the Zodiacs with the expedition team, and our expedition guides are actually the ones driving the Zodiacs. It's not our ship crew. And that's what's really neat, is because I was able to be in a Zodiac with a glaciologist once and a geologist. And they silenced the Zodiac again to have a moment of peace and silence to reflect on where we are. And what was incredible was the fact that he said, "What do you hear?" And I said, "I hear like a snap." And he's like, "Exactly. It's a snap, crackle, pop, like Rice Krispies." So that's the sound that the icebergs are making because they're melting in the areas that we're in. So seeing being by these floating icebergs, it was neat to hear the sound of them when you quiet yourself enough.
Wow. It would be amazing. Being in that Zodiac and then close to those icebergs, you really think how insignificant you are, right? Compared to that massive.
Yeah. I love seeing that size difference. You're absolutely right. And you look up and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so with the peninsula, there's so much to see and do. And so just to get an idea of the map again, so with the Drake Passage, And these are trips out of Ushuaia. And some of the trips go from Buenos Aires with a charter flight, but this is just to give you an idea with the map again, because I really like maps. And this is where I was talking about with Punta Arenas to fly over the Drake Passage with the flight, so little as 8 days. So, if you kind of say, oh, I don't want to go for 2 or 3 weeks to Antarctica, well, there's trips as little as 8 days, so which is great.
And you could actually see quite a bit in that 8 days, right? So that they're
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always compare it to the Masai Mara a little bit. If someone wants to go to Kenya, I love spending a lot of time in the Masai Mara, going around different camps and seeing different areas. So someone can go and spend 6 or 8 days in the peninsula. But if someone only wants to spend 4 or 5 in the peninsula, which is what you get with the Fly Cruise 8-day program or the 11 or 12 cruising the Drake Passage Antarctic Explorer trip, you just have, the same amount of time on the peninsula, just flying or cruising. But to your point, Susan, is some people want to stay longer. So there are trips that are 14 days when you're crossing the Drake Passage and then spending more time in the peninsula if you do want to spend longer. So you can venture beyond 66.5 degrees south to cross the Antarctic Circle. Again, another one of those checklist items.
Absolutely. North Pole, and way down south. Oh, absolutely.
Exactly. So if you are looking for a more in-depth exploration of the peninsula, you can venture further. And I think this is a great opportunity to just explore, especially if you only know that you're only going once. This is a great opportunity to go further and farther.
That's what I was thinking, that you spend all that time and effort to get down there, make it really worthwhile, so that if you never get the chance to go back again, that you really feel that, wow, look what I saw, look what I was able to accomplish, and take in all these breathtaking areas.
Exactly. And then we have the Crossing the Circle too with the Fly Cruise program. So if you want to still cross the Antarctic Circle and spend more time on the continent, but you still want to fly, that option's available. And these Fly Cruise programs aren't as long as the end of October to the beginning of April in season. We typically do these trips in December, January, into March. So it's not, we don't offer it from the full beginning of the season to the end too, just due to weather with the flights, because fog can come into play with the flight. But this is great because you land in King George Island. It's a Chilean military base, and that's where you get on the comfort of the luxurious vessel.
Awesome.
But I love that you had king penguins on your radar, because now I want to take everyone a little bit further north and explore the Falklands in South Georgia. And so Falklands are a romantically wild archipelago in the South Atlantic Ocean, and a lonely British outpost, rich in history, about 500 kilometers east of Patagonia, which I'll talk about in a minute as well. Excuse me. The islands are home to five penguin species. So gentoos, the kings that you mentioned, rockhoppers, macaroni, and Magellanic. So we'll talk about some of those.
Wow.
But in these areas too, you can see dolphins. Like when we were sailing back up to South America from Antarctica, I saw a pod of dolphins at the bow of the ship. So these are great areas to spend time in these subantarctic regions. And then South Georgia is a wildlife paradise. So if you've been to Galapagos, put this on your radar. I still need to get to Galapagos Islands. But
it's on mine too.
Okay, because I need to go. But because with South Georgia, it's 1,500 kilometers south of Falklands. So we typically go to Falklands first, and then South Georgia on the way down to Antarctica. So it is a little bit of a distance between the Falklands and South Georgia, but it's great to explore. And so with South Georgia, it's not only the final resting place of Sir Ernest Shackleton, the explorer, but it is home to over 200,000 king penguins.
Look at that. So beautiful.
And look how lush and green this is.
I know, I see that.
People think it is.
Ah, they would have thought just snow everywhere, but look at how beautiful that is. Amazing.
Yeah, we're reaching closer to the equator again with South Georgia being farther north than Antarctica. It's things can be lush and green. So it can be chilly, but again, sometimes we do the last 6 kilometers of Sir Ernest Shackleton's walk, the legendary walk. But sometimes it's nice to just sit amongst the penguins. There's also elephant seals. But you know what I loved finding out this fun fact about the penguins. So these king penguins, those brown ones, can you see those brown ones?
Yes, the babies.
They are the babies. You're
Yeah.
right. You do know your stuff. Oh
Yeah.
my God. We need to go to South Georgia.
Yes.
I love it. Because, and with the babies, they didn't actually know. A lot of naturalists thought that they were a completely different species of penguin because they looked so different. So they are disguised by their woolly brown down. But Susan, I always talk about the wildlife, but I wanted to share with everyone today too how beautiful.
Look at that. It is very beautiful.
I just love mountain ranges, and to know, with Patagonia, the mountain ranges, they're beautiful. Antarctica, the mountain ranges, but in these areas like South Georgia, it's just spectacular backdrops. So again, with the maps, just to see that South Georgia is that outlying island, the subantarctic region, and it's wonderful to be able to explore that with Antarctica. So there are trips that include that. I used to have some people say, you know what, I don't want to do the Falklands, but I guess I will because you only have Falkland, South Georgia, Antarctica trips. You don't just have South Georgia and Antarctica, because now we do have South Georgia and Antarctica trips, but we didn't always use them. We used to have Falkland Islands, South Georgia, and Antarctica, so everyone had to do the big trip. But people that came back that really just thought Falklands was just nothing really to what they wanted to see, they were so glad they did because it's beautiful. So this is a cove, Gypsy Cove, outside of Stanley. One of my colleagues took this shot. So it's just stunning. The Falkland Islands, little pub crawls too in Stanley, little British pubs. So this is a great place to explore.
Look at that white beach. You'd think you were in the Caribbean.
I know. And so the Falkland Islands, and this is just, if you don't know what you don't know, right, Susan? I didn't know how beautiful the Falklands were. And so I loved how it was a surprise and delight for people. And so not only with this beautiful scenery, like you're saying, those sandy beaches, but they're home to different species of penguins too, like the rock hopper penguin. So these are those with the funky hairdo.
If anybody watched Happy Feet, that would be the penguin that was depicted there, right?
There you go. Definitely. What a feel-good movie. I think we should all watch that.
Yes.
Some popcorn.
Oh, stunning. But
the albatross is, if anyone's a birder, an albatross is definitely on a lot of birders' lists to see. And there are nesting pairs in the Falkland Islands, so seeing nesting pairs there. But the albatross, like this black-browed albatross, it's the wingspan of 7.5 feet. Just a huge wingspan. It's the largest wingspan of any living bird. Just remarkable. And so you can catch a glimpse of them crossing the Drake Passage because, like I said, sometimes they do soar. When I was talking about the Drake Passage, sometimes they do soar counterclockwise to get the draft of the vessel, because these birds, they actually can fly for 2 years without landing. And just
I didn't know that. Well, there you go. I definitely learned something today.
So they nest on land and then they go out and explore. So just some highlights today. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but those are just some fun highlights of these regions. So there are the Falkland Islands. So starting in Ushuaia, then Falklands, then going to South Georgia and Antarctica. But there's also a 23-day trip where it's the Epic Antarctica. So, if you want to start in Ushuaia, go to Falkland Islands, Antarctica, but crossing the Antarctic Circle. So you're not only seeing Falklands, South Georgia, and Antarctica, but then it's the whole kit and caboodle. You're crossing 66 degrees south too for the Antarctic Circle.
Wow. Definitely a big check mark if you did that.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely the most in-depth exploration.
Yeah.
But Patagonia is so beautiful too, and even, you know, I know people who've explored Patagonia and then didn't make it down to Antarctica, and vice versa. I've had people that go to Antarctica and come home and they go, "Oh, I wish I would have spent some time in Patagonia." And so, whether or not you do it on a ship or you do it by land, it's definitely something beautiful and spectacular to explore. It encompasses the vast southernmost tip of South America and is shared by Argentina and Chile. And so it's just incredible because of the Andes Mountains. So there's beautiful lakes and fjords and glaciers. It's home to some of the most remote glacial and fjord systems on the planet. So, and then you also see some penguins too. It's abundant in wildlife and sea lions. And, you know, if you're cruising out of Ushuaia to get to Antarctica, in the Beagle Channel is beautiful. So if you have a few hours of cruising in the Beagle Channel, you might catch some of these sites like these sea lions and things like that in the Beagle Channel as well. So there are areas to explore on an Antarctic Explorer trip. So if you go to Antarctica and then come back, there is an itinerary that does explore Patagonia. And so why not seize the opportunity to explore the visited area like Cape Horn and Diego Ramirez. So
yeah,
because these are some of the least explored places on the planet. So again, you can explore it on your own after or before a trip for sure out of Ushuaia or out of Punta Arenas, but it's a great opportunity to see it by ship as well. But what really makes our trips unique, and Susan, I mentioned with the Arctic, a lot of adventure options, because we do have more adventure options than any other operator in the polar regions. And so we really specialize people getting everyone off the ship and into the heart of these destinations. So like the Arctic that I had mentioned earlier in previous gatherings with you, is the fact that we do have those Zodiac cruises included, landings, heli sightseeing, those flight sightseeing trips. But in Antarctica, there are so many more adventure options.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
We have the kayaking, was a full sea kayaking program. I loved paddling, where it's those inflatable paddles, kayaks that you see there. So they're inflatable, so we call it a paddling program.
Awesome.
We even have camping for one end on the continent. So that on the top right there is that setting up a tent or in a bivy bag. So depending on what someone wants to do, these are additional adventure options. But in Antarctica, those, you know, I liked staying on the ship and being warm in the comfort of the duvet.
Yes.
my want. But then, you know, it was so neat because at breakfast the next morning or at lunch, we heard stories of people who went out and did camp for one night on the continent. So we supply the camping equipment and everything. And we had someone celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary camping on the continent and putting together their tent in Antarctica. They thought, you know, they had done a lot during their 25 years of marriage, but putting up a tent in Antarctica was a true testament of their together.
Let's see if they're going to continue, right?
Exactly. And then we also have stand-up paddleboarding. So those stand-up paddleboards there. And have you tried stand-up paddleboarding before, Susan?
No, I have a friend that has that, and I've been meaning to get down there, but you know, due to this pandemic, it's kind of put a kibosh. But she has fun with it, yes.
Because I think, oh my gosh, if I were to try paddleboarding, would I try it in Antarctica? And because I would feel like I haven't tried it really yet either. And so I need to do the same as you. I have a friend that has one and I've been meaning to get out on hers. But one of our stand-up paddle guides is from Tofino on the west coast of British Columbia. And he is incredible because he said to me that over 70% of his group that he guides in Antarctica to do stand-up paddleboarding have never stand-up paddleboarded before.
70%. Well, I can understand. Yeah. I'd be afraid to fall in.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
So sometimes the spirit of Antarctica really takes over with the adventure and people.
It moves you. Go beyond your limits.
Yeah, exactly. And so it can be, again, if some people too, Susan, want to stay on board, enjoy the spa, enjoy happy hour, and don't want to go on every excursion, they don't have to either. But that's what I love about being able to travel to these regions on a small vessel with a lot of different types of people.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were times where I'd go for a big walk and my aunt stayed on board and journaled and went through her photos, and we could share about our experiences at dinner of maybe what she saw from the comfort of the platform of the vessel. So there really is a little something for everyone. So there is even mountaineering in Antarctica in the months where there's a lot more snow, like November and December, January, and also cross-country skiing in Antarctica. So a lot of things to choose from.
I would definitely do that.
So this, again, I can't talk about Quark Expeditions without talking about our expedition team. It's we have the really, really, in my personal opinion, the best expedition team. This is one of the reasons why I've been with Quark Expeditions for so long. I truly believe it's not only where we are, but who we're traveling with. And
Absolutely.
our guides are those, the ornithologists, glaciologists, geologists, like I was saying earlier, the penguinologists. But what I love is they're not only driving the zodiacs and taking you out, but they're also sitting with people during dinners and lunches and mingling with the guests on board. They're giving presentations throughout the trip. So I loved learning so much about the areas in which we're in and the things that we'd maybe seen that day. And it's we have an amazing Quark Academy program as well. So it's a really an industry leading academy. So we have all of our expedition team trained and going through this program before our Antarctic season begins. So with our fleet, I won't go over all of our ships, but I wanted to go to over 2 popular vessels in Antarctica with us. We have a little something for everyone because we have the Ultramarine, the Ocean Adventurer, the Ocean Diamond, and the World Explorer in Antarctica. But the Ultramarine is our brand new vessel. And Susan, I love how the great thing to talk about, there's some silver linings with all of this in the state of the world right now. And she just did her sea trials in Croatia.
And there's a beautiful country.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So it was so neat to it's just such a good news story. We were getting video clips from our Senior Vice President of Operations who's in Croatia, along with one of our expedition team leaders there as well. Just there's real hands on deck with this project, and I'm just thrilled that she's come to life. I almost had tears in my eyes when I saw some of the footage from her sea trials.
I'm sure, and she's a stunning looking ship. I mean, really, yeah.
And it's neat too because expedition, people feel like it is too much for them. It might be too adventurous, they need to be too really active. But, with this ship, especially the world, you can go to these ends of the world and actually it's like getting into a bathtub. If you can step into a bathtub, you can step into the Zodiac. Like this platform on the Ultramarine is incredible because it's really wonderful for people who are a little bit intimidated. They're thinking, I don't want to go down a gangway. So this ship is even more comfortable for expeditionary spirits who don't want to have a lot of, they might not be too mobile or they're scared of too much activity. It's a wonderful ship for any level of adventure and an activity level.
Wonderful.
So there's spas on board and outdoor cabins like we've seen before, because I did show this on some of the Arctic presentations, but it's just a wonderful little vessel. But one that I didn't share that I wanted to share with you today, Susan, is the World Explorer. So this is another great expedition ship that we have in Antarctica, 176 passengers. So again, a small vessel. She's designed for superior comfort. So all balcony, all suite vessel. So she's got 6 tiers of deluxe accommodation. So she doesn't have helicopters, but she's a wonderful expedition vessel in Antarctica. So if someone really is looking for that luxurious experience, this is definitely the ship to go on with our expedition team. So she's the only ship currently in the world with a Octane spa on board as well.
Ooh, cool. Well, there you go. Rejuvenation for sure. So,
And I've talked a lot about our expedition experience on board and when we've talked about some of the Arctic destinations, but we do have superb cuisine. Like the food on board, just because it's expedition doesn't mean the food isn't delicious. The chef prepared meals, great cuisine, polar libraries, those great educational programs on board. Also themed events. And we also have gyms, so exercise rooms on the ships. So it's a wonderful onboard experience as well. And the ship really is one of the best viewing platforms for wildlife and scenery too. We always encourage people to get out on deck as much as possible.
mm, enjoy, yes, for sure.
And what's neat too is one thing that our company is doing that I really wholeheartedly believe we separates us from the rest as well is the fact that our expedition teams stay on the bridge 24/7. So they take turns, Susan, and are always on the lookout for wildlife. So for instance, one morning, it was about 3 a.m, and one of our expedition team members spotted an emperor penguin, one little lonely emperor penguin on an iceberg, and gently woke up the ship saying, everyone, there's an emperor penguin on board. I highly recommend you coming out on deck to see it. And so, of course, some people slept through it, but some people wanted to get up, and we quietly went out on deck. So the ship really is such a great platform. So we're always encouraging people. The onboard experience is so wonderful.
I'd be one of those ones getting up. I definitely would want to see it.
You'd be racing to get your parka on, or sometimes you'd probably even leave your parka and just run out with your sweater.
Probably.
And we do have an incredible sustainability program and sustainability achievements. It's always been a part of our DNA. We came out with the Polar Promise in 2019. So please ask Susan for a sustainability report. It is a public document. So we're reducing our footprint and building resilience. We measure, report, and reduce emissions. And in 2017, we eliminated single-use plastics. So it's incredible to know how much we've even decreased in emissions by 28% since 2010 alone. So just really, and even building the communities, the relationships with the communities that we visit in the Arctic, that's a really big part of partnerships, as well as organizations like the Save the Albatross Foundation, for instance, in the sub-Antarctic region we were a part of. So it's wonderful with the partnerships that we're affiliated with too.
Yeah. So,
and one thing that I hadn't mentioned too is just safe protocols. So we have our new safe COVID policy that came out a couple weeks ago, Susan, in terms of a video that we launched and everything, because I think more than ever, people are wondering what travel will be looking like. So there's all like onboard rapid testing we'll have. We really want the 4 pillars of health and safety to be our, healthy fellow passengers and clean expedition vessels, healthy staff, and then also healthy expedition environment. So that's just something we're really focused on. So if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Susan with that, because we're doing a lot. We have a new policy out, which is great. We also have a great Book with Confidence program. So you can book with peace of mind from booking to boarding. We have everyone covered, Susan, every step of the way.
There you go. So they should not feel pressure that they would lose everything. Actually, if anything, they can feel safe and confident that they're going to have a wonderful time. And if something did happen, they'd be looked after.
That's exactly it, Susan, because I really do believe that people are wanting to book now because they're scared space is going to run out for 2022, 2023, which is, it can be, that's a very much a reality where the backup of pent up demand, but then people also are scared to book because they don't want to lose their money, or they don't want to lose their deposit, or they don't want to lose, they're scared to cancel for any reason. So there's lots that we've got covered. It's one of the best health and safety plans, as well as the, as policies we have out there. So it's really exciting that if someone does want to book and save their spot for a small deposit, they can.
Awesome.
So thank you so much. I just wanted to share some great things, because travel will be picking up, all these vaccinations rolling out, and lots of great onboard policies. I think, we're going to start, we're not only dreaming of travel, but I can see the future for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Cara, to join us. Antarctica is on my list, and Patagonia and the Falkland Islands and all that area. I just would love to see it. The penguins, oh, they're so cute and cuddly. I know we have to keep our distance, but hey, I'd love to be there to see them. I'm an adventurous at heart. I definitely am a learner. I kind of escapist. I think I kind of cover all those checklists. That would definitely be a checklist on my list. So I fall into all of those categories, but it's so awesome to learn that people think, why would you go there? Well, you'd be amazed. You'd come back a new person, and you'd be wowed by the scenery, the wildlife, and how Quark Expeditions really looks after you and cares for you, and it cares for the environment, and really the programs put in place and the knowledge that they have. You'd come back and like I said earlier, be wowed. So let's get a group together. Let's go, gals. Let's go.
Yes.
Go in your bubble travel, so to speak, if you want, or if you have a group of friends. But I think you would really be impressed. So that's something to think about. And we talked about earlier, travel empowers you. Travel rejuvenates you. And when you make a trip like this, you want to see it and take it all in, and you'll come back and you'll just be a totally different person, maybe even to help the environment more. Who's to say? I don't know. But,
yes. Yeah, it really is transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so very much, Cara. I really appreciated that. You got me all excited. You know, I'm always excited to go on an adventure. So, but we'll
leave it.
Have to get people going. There is the Toronto Outdoor Show that's going on virtually that people can take this and think about. That there's things to get involved with. The goadventureguide.com/Toronto. You can reach out to us, myself, with Real Talk Travel, but under Group Travel by Susan. I'd be happy to start you on your adventure, and you never know where we could take you, right? So anyway, thanks everybody. Just be safe, be happy, keep smiling. We will travel. It is opening up. So start planning now. Don't wait.
Yeah, exactly.
It will happen. And there's so many programs like this one that you can put your money down and feel that you're not going to lose it because of all the confidence and all the protocols that they put into place for you. Okay, so take care, everybody. Enjoy. We will see you next week. And there's another adventure waiting for you. So come join us next Tuesday. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.